Son of a bitch.
Groovy.
Hey everybody, this is Matthew Movies coming at you with the latest in my movie discussion series, and this time around I'm going to be comparing two movies that are both adaptations of the same character, and that is the 1995 Judge Dredd starring Sylvester Stallone and the 2012 Dredd starring Carl Urban. Two movies that I think could not be more different, even though they're based on the same source material, one of which I think is pretty awesome and the other one I think is pretty terrible, even though I do have to admit I do have some nostalgia for it, and I guess I'm kind of giving it away. But the Judge Dredd with Sylvester Stallone is the one that I think is far, far, far inferior. I mean, just right off the hop, just Sly's version of the character just completely misses the point to a large degree. I mean, you have Carl Urban, who does just such a great job, I think, as Dredd. I think the people behind that movie totally understood the character. I mean, he's not out there, you know, with like one-liners or anything like that. He's gruff, he's angry, he keeps his helmet on. He's kind of almost monosyllabic. He's not a talkative person by any stretch of the imagination. He is just a judge, jury, and an executioner, all wrapped up in one. He passes judgment with the greatest of ease, kills people, doesn't seem to take any great pleasure in it. He's doing his job. He is Judge Dredd, and for me, I thought that was awesome. I mean, personally, I gotta admit, I've never read any of the comics or anything like that, but from what I understand, it's definitely much more in line with the character. And then you have Sly's version, who, I mean, I am a big fan of Sylvester Stallone. I enjoy many of his movies, but I think this is one of my least favorite of his. I mean, I think it is not very effective in any stretch. I mean, the fact that he's Judge Dredd and he has the mask off almost throughout, barely ever has it on. First off, right off the hop, I mean, that just doesn't feel right at all. I don't like it in lots of movies where they do that. Second off, this doesn't feel like a Judge Dredd movie. I mean, he's barely actually Judge Dredd, right? Throughout most of the movie, he's been stripped of his authority and he's trying to find his way back, and it plays like a much more of a boilerplate movie. It doesn't have any of the things that make the character distinctive, which I thought was a big disappointment. And I don't think Sylvester Stallone does like a terrible job playing the character. I just think it's written horribly. So I think that's where that right off the hop, that character really falls apart. And then when you compare the two villains of this movie, I mean, you have Armand Assante, who plays the villain in the Judge Dredd with Sylvester Stallone, and I mean, he's just chewing the scenery. He's yelling so many lines. He's very over the top. And his whole plan is pretty ridiculous. It has much more of a sci-fi bend to it, and it's just it's hard to take. I don't necessarily think that it's the fault of the actor, the performer. It's more the way the character was written, I thought was pretty horrendous and just doesn't work for me at all. But then you have the Dredd version of the villain played by Lena Headey, who I think just absolutely is awesome, and she's just so fearsome. I mean, this movie definitely, the Dredd, plays off of the concept of the raid to a large degree, where it's a guy going into a building trying to kill all these people to get to the main person that they're trying to take out, and I thought that was effective because it really works in the raid and it really works here. I thought Lena Headey does. I mean, she's just so magnificent. She's so badass in this movie. I mean, she's fearsome, somebody that you could absolutely see being terrified of, because she is not somebody to mess with whatsoever. I mean, she plays her character completely balls to the wall, but she isn't chewing the scenery like Armand Assante is by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, it feels like a real person, and I love the facial scar, the whole nine. I mean, I think just her demeanor, her look, everything about her character, I think, absolutely works. Then, I mean, you have the sidekick in both films. I mean, in the Judge Dredd version, you have Rob Schneider, of all people, which, I mean, come on. Rob Schneider. I mean, I have to admit, I do get enjoyment out of his character. I do think he's entertaining. He is funny in the film, in my personal opinion. He's a good entrance to the movie, but it just does not fit the tone that these movies should have been going after by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, personally, I think Schneider is probably the best part of Judge Dredd, but he's still not great by any stretch of the imagination. Whereas you have Olivia Thirlby's character in Dredd, who's this kind of new judge on the block, and she's trying to figure out how this whole system works, and she's at the basically being taught by Dredd, who's this judge that everybody looks up to, and she's trying to figure out, I mean, the morality of what they do. And I thought her character was very, very interesting, and again, is a perfect entrance point for people watching this movie, because somebody more to kind of invest in and care about more, because you know Dredd is so monosyllabic that it's kind of hard to invest in him, but it's more, you're more watching what he's doing, whereas Olivia Thirlby's character, you're like, oh, you know, you come to care for her. So I thought she was a magnificent part of that movie. I mean, personally, I feel like Dredd really, really works fantastically overall. I mean, you just look at just those three characters that I've talked about so far. I mean, I thought all of them were great. And then you do have a character that I think is interesting, that is basically the Lena Headey's main lackey, per se, an actor who has been in many awesome in so many things. I always think of him as being from The Wire. I'm drawing a blank at the moment on his name, so I'm just going to take a quick look here. But Wood Harris, I think he does a great job in it, and he's a very interesting character. He has his own sense of morality. He's a kind of on. He's not really a lackey. He's just basically the side character, and he has his own sense of morality, and he sees the things he's doing as being kind of just as well. And I thought his character was very, very interesting. Whereas in the Judge Dredd, I mean, when you look at this kind of side characters, aside from the judges that are set to judge him, I mean, you have these very, very over the top. I mean, for instance, when Judge Dredd is banished, he comes across this family that have been kind of they have a kid that has mechanical implants, and they're like cannibals, and they're very, very over the top. And then you get introduced to Amartya Sante's kind of his robot warriors, and I mean, it's just a very, very over the top film in that regard. I mean, the two movies could really, in a lot of ways, could not be more different. I mean, I personally, wildly prefer the 2012 version. I think it's a much more interesting film, and of course, I mean, the whole concept where they have like the whole drug aspect of it, where there's this drug that makes everything kind of slow down for the person who takes it. So there's these moments where people are on that drug, so you see like this violence and gore kind of happening in extreme slow motion. I think it's just freaking fantastic and really fascinating, and it just visually is very dynamic and very, very cool. It adds a lot to the film in my personal point of view, and also, it could have felt kind of gimmicky, but because of the story, the way that they explain why you're seeing it like that, I think it totally works. And this isn't, just kind of thrown in for no reason. It totally makes sense for the story they're telling, and I think adds a great deal to the film. So, when you're comparing the two movies, I think it's just, night and day. The Dredd just absolutely destroys Judge Dredd, and it's interesting. You can't quite call it a remake, because it's not based off of the 95 version film at all, but it is the second adaptation, and in that regard, it's kind of rare that they did it better the second time around. That's not something you see all that often, so I thought that was very, very cool. And I was always disappointed that the 2012 version did not get a sequel, whereas a sequel to the Sylvester Stallone film, definitely not needed, definitely not warranted, definitely not wanted. So, I mean, right there, that speaks to how I feel about the two films. So let me know in the comment section below what you think. If you feel that the 2012 version kicks the 1995 version's ass, I should say. If you prefer the 95 version, just you enjoyed the campiness of it and the ridiculousness, or just the fact that Sylvester Stallone's in it and you're a big fan of his. I mean, that's understandable. People like what they like, right? So if you prefer that version, let me know. Whatever, just hit me up in that comment section. Give me some feedback. Aside from all that, though, hit that like button, hit that share button, because it's much more likely that other people will discover this video exists and come and check it out and give me some feedback. And aside from all that, though, please hit that notification bell, hit that subscription button if you haven't done it yet. It would be absolutely awesome to have you come join my channel, give me some feedback when I put out a new video, find out when I put out a new video, and all that stuff, which would just be fantastic. Aside from all that, though, have yourself a good day.